Thank you all. And now moving to the fourth and last session for today. So global trend transforming the way we work, learn and live, and the skills we need to thrive in the fast evolving context. As market evolves, so much the skill set of learning professionals. The third session is about skill-based training, adapting to the changing market trends. I take the opportunity to welcome and introduce our guest and panelist, Shri Dilip Hanumara, CEO and Executive Director, Trigyn Technologies. Welcome, Dr. Swati Mujumdar. She's the first a women entrepreneur to set up first skill university in Maharashtra, and also Pro-Chancellor, Symbiosis University of Applied Sciences, Indore. I welcome Dr. Nehru, Vice-Chancellor of Shri Vishwakarma Skill University, Gurugram. I welcome Professor Krishnan Balasubramanian of IIT Madras. Welcome, sir. And another guest, Dr. M.K. Surappa, of he's former Vice-Chancellor, Anna University. Welcome. So last three sessions have been quite special, and different dimensions of NEP and industry and innovation we have already covered. So in the last session, we are talking about skill-based training, adapting to the changing market trends. To begin with, Mr. Dilip Hanumara. The whole education system is there to produce a manpower to serve the society, be it India or be it out of India. And by and large, alumnus of IIT, they have been well received across the world. So in the changing times or now coming times, in what way we can prepare our locals for the global workforce?
Thank you, Puneet ji, and I welcome all the panelists for this session. Puneet ji, in that question, I just want to add one more thing. You know, in addition to catering to the society, most of the workforce now are focused on also finding a purpose for themselves. That might not have been the case if you go back a decade ago or 2 decades ago. But today, the younger generation who are coming out of the colleges, and especially considering the Indian demographics where 60% are below 30 or 35 years old, their parents have provided for them enough. They don't have to worry about a meal for tomorrow. They're not hand to mouth anymore. So they're focused on finding their own purpose and making an impact for themselves too. And that's a great thing. Coming back to your question of preparing the local workforce for the global, you know, Thomas Friedman wrote this book called The World is Flat in 2005. So in the last 15, 16 years, the world has become only flatter. That is more true today than ever before. Information travels at the speed of bits, you know, including, in fact, you saw it at the pace at which even the virus traveled across the globe. So today, when we talk about workforce, it's a global workforce. You know, when the IT boom started, let's say early 90s, most of the companies came to India, the offshoring model or the outsourcing model, and our value was more a price arbitrage at that point in time. And also, you know, that was the opening of Indian economy. And most of the people were eager to get any job at that point. But today, those dynamics have completely changed. Today, our workforce want to be leaders. They don't want to be followers anymore. Especially the last 25 years of you know, the technology prowess, both from companies' perspective as well as the leaders. Today, if you look at the world's largest technology companies, their CEOs are Indian. And of course, the younger generation noticed that change. And now they have clear targets. They can look upon someone and say, here is someone who could have been sitting next to me, and he's the CEO, so I could be that as well. Today, they're motivated in taking their ideas, getting their chance to the global stage. So the workforce that we're generating today, we don't need to do specially anything to create them for the global workforce. We need to create them for the local. Today, if you look at the government policies and also the ambitions of the government in the digital technologies, they want to create platforms. This is what even every company wants to create. Indian government is trying to do the same thing. So when we create someone local, where they're already ready for the global market. Recently, I was in one of the conference where Fortune 500, about 40% of Fortune 500 CIOs were present. The common things that they talked about were, as the technologies are now transitioned to cloud, data, AI, making use of the data using AI, towards platforms. They want people who can understand the business processes and then design solutions. That's a tremendous gap. If you look at what we went through over the last 18 months or 2 years, COVID has accelerated the adoption to the cloud, adoption to the technology, digitalization. This has created a systemic, uneven balance between the demand and the supply of the workforce. So waiting for our engineering colleges to churn out the people is not enough. This is where the skill training will come into play. And some of these technologies that are required today are fleeting technologies. We're rapidly moving towards low-code, no-code environments. Higher level programming languages are coming into play more and more. So we need to be quick in adapting, in creating programs, both at the university levels, as well as training centers, as well as digital platforms, in creating a workforce that can cater to today's needs, because tomorrow's needs will be a little bit different. That, and day after tomorrow is going to be something different. Take the example of, in Trigyn itself, take the example of Cowin. Cowin today is a platform with 1 billion transactions a day. It's the only platform in the world that has registered 1 billion vaccinations. The Trigyn team that delivered Cowin worked remotely from across the country, from across India. Every day they were on call with the Ministry of Health, with NEGD, with NHA, in war room-like setup. Virtually, the same way we are talking, they were talking, the teams were talking every day. That's how Cowin was delivered. No one went to office. It was in the middle of the pandemic. And no other country in the world has this platform. Thanks to the government of India offering it to the rest of the world that is in need. So the talent that developed Cowin can pretty much develop any application in the world, can cater to any need in the world on the cloud. That's the type of talent that we have in India today. And that's the type of talent that will also cater to the world workforce today. And one last thing, I know I focused a lot on digital workforce, but this is also true in a lot of different areas. If you look at healthcare, nurses, home care is in demand across the globe with the aging demographics in a lot of Western and Eastern countries. So Indian population can cater to the rest of the world. We've seen this during the COVID. To cater to India, you need the world to respond. But once the capacity is built in India, India can cater to the world.
Thank you, Dilipji, for throwing a complete picture about preparing a local workforce for global needs. Now, moving to Professor Krishna Balasubramanian. There is a common perception in the society that the purpose of education is to acquire a degree and subsequently leading to a job. And previously, Dr. Dilipji as well, very well, clarified that now the youth is looking forward for finding a purpose of life ultimately, not merely a job. So your take on how to break this ice of acquiring a degree versus becoming a useful person.
So thank you, Puneet ji. I hope everybody can hear me well.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think what you're saying is certainly a paradigm that many of us grew up when we were growing up. That was a paradigm that we always were, encountered. There are multiple paradigms in education that we had encountered. Some of it is to the purpose for education was to place yourself in a lucrative job. And many years ago, a government job was always preferred over a private job. Now, that demographics and that thinking, like what Dilip had already mentioned, has transitioned itself to where the youth of today are no more looking at a job as the end all. As he put it, there is a bit more of a purpose to what they want to do. As everybody realized today, being an engineer or a doctor probably doesn't fetch you the kind of salaries that you would normally get if you are something else. In fact, there are many engineers and doctors that who probably start at a lower pay than a driver or a cook. So there's a very big shift in the way the paradigm has changed, and the line of thinking of the youth have changed significantly. Today, for instance, my students do not necessarily think of sitting on one side of the table being interviewed by a company. They would definitely like to look at a possibility that they are on the other side of the table interviewing other students. That's one paradigm change that's happening. About 10 to 15% of students today, after the year or two of graduation, we tend to be on the other side of the table where they're interviewing the students, and most of them are either through startups or similar entrepreneurial efforts. Now, it's also true that even the job seekers, their line of thinking has changed a lot. Previously, it used to be driven by salaries. It used to be driven by the sort of the ranking of the company or or the organization. Today, I believe that the young the students, they look beyond that. Again, going back to what Mr. Dilip said about purpose, they are not so driven by the type of company or the type of salary that they get, but more importantly, they think long term. They look at job satisfaction. They're looking at how they can make an impact to the society at large. Very significant number of students actually turned on very high paying jobs for taking jobs that they believe creates a better purpose for their future. Now, not all of them probably sustain themselves in those jobs, but many of them believe that it's a part of their learning experience, which they need to really, go through before they reach a particular steady state where they would probably look at salaries, they will look at the type of environment in which they want to work for. And many of them are driven towards that. Today, education system does permit you also to experience some of this a little earlier. So today we have many mechanisms. I remember that when I did my engineering, I had to do an in-plant training. It was called in-plant training. It was not called internship. Okay, so in-plant training. And very specifically, if you're an engineer, you must go to a large manufacturing company and spend 4 weeks to 6 weeks there. And then you must get the certificate. If you don't get the certificate, you don't graduate. Today, that is completely redefined. It's now, of course, called internship. And what it means by an internship has changed significantly. In fact, almost every student in most of the engineering colleges today look for doing an internship every chance they get. They look at internship as a learning experience, as an experiential learning purpose, and many of them probably do anywhere from 2 to 4 to 6 internships during a 4-year curriculum. That is a big difference in the way line of thinking, that when they come out, there is a significant awareness that they have created for themselves. And hence the kind of students that are coming out of colleges today are much better informed. They are driven by, as Dilip put it, a purpose to make a contribution to the society at large, a purpose to upskill themselves very differentially. And the kind of thought process that goes inside them is very different from the kind of thought process that I grew up in. So that's a big change in the whole line of thinking. Now, this may not be reflected in the thought process of parents. However, even parents have changed their line of thinking. I'll give you a small anecdote. So I've been trying to encourage my students and project staff to look at entrepreneurial for the last 15, 20 years. So one of my first ever effort towards that was a student, not from IIT Madras, but from the neighboring college in Anna University. This guy, I found him to be out-of-box thinker, and I encouraged him after graduating. He did his final year project with me, and I kind of pushed him towards an entrepreneur because I thought that he had the skill set that's different from anybody else, particularly some of my own students. And he listened to me, and he started a company, and it was doing all right for about 4 years, 5 years. Then one day he came to me, and I could visibly see he was very upset, And I asked him, "What's wrong?" And he said, "I think you ruined my life." And I looked at him and said, "Boss, I really never expected you to say this to me. I thought, I was doing the best I can and with your best interest in mind." He said, no, the business is doing well. I'm happy with my work. My problem is I'm not getting a bride. No father-in-law, potential father-in-law wants to marry. He says, "Bring me a payslip." And I cannot, and he says, "If I send a payslip, it is not valid." So, but this is a big paradigm change, which is only within about 10 years, thanks to the awareness creation. Today, you don't have the same situation. Parents are okay with their children, doing something on their own. They in fact encourage it, and to finish up the story, this guy actually found a girl in my own lab. And they have they're well married and happy. It's been almost 8-9 years since he's married, and they have a kid. So the point is that there is a phenomenal shift, not only in the students' minds, but also in the minds of the population of India, parents, teachers. Everybody is changing their mindset today. And being a creative entrepreneur is no more a point of shame, and I believe that this trend is only starting right now, and I believe that the youth are going to redefine, and as Dilip said, 60% are below 30 today, and probably that number is going to increase a little bit more before it goes the other way around. So we're going to be a majority of our youth are going to define the future of this country. And I think they are extremely well informed. They are far more decisive than where I was at the same age, far more informed, and they are capable of better decisions than you and I. And I think as facilitators, whether it's a government, whether it's the institution, we need to find ways and means to encourage them, and more importantly, not stand in the way. And as long as we become facilitators, I think the country is in the best hands. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Krishnan. Well said that the job of parent as well as academic institutions as well as mentors or faculty members has changed. Now it's a job of a mentor, not of a preacher.
Absolutely.
Knowledge is already available in Google and through books and all YouTube and digital platforms.
Right, exactly.
So moral support is there. We are there for you. That is the need of the hour rather than being a conventional,
Thank you.
teaching and preaching. So I take the pride to welcome Dr. Swati Mujumdar, the women entrepreneur who set up the first skill university in Maharashtra. Welcome, Swati ji.
Thank you, sir.
Also, Pro-Chancellor Symbiosis, University of Applied Sciences, Indore. And the another panelist is Dr. Nehru. He is Vice-Chancellor, Shri Vishwakarma Skill University, Gurugram. Welcome, both of you. So now I'm moving to Dr. M.K. Surappa. Are you there?
Yeah, very much I'm there. I'm seeing you here.
Okay. So conventionally, we have been using the classical learning framework, classroom, certain credits, and laboratory, certain credits. Now the pedagogies have changed. Now the modern learning systems are prevailing. So your take on adopting these modern learning systems?
First of all, let me thank Dr. Ganapati, who invited me for this webinar on the Mission Education 2021. Okay, I have now heard how my predecessors, two of my colleagues, distinguished panelists, talked about it. Now, this mission education, I understand, is concerned now with a skill development or a skill training or skill. The whole country is now aspiring for a skill. We have been talking about for the last 10 years, skill and all. I think so. Let me now take a few minutes of my time. What is the skill that is required? What is it? Is it a skill or called the middle level skills is different from the higher innovation and research? How each one is important for the nation, to become an economical superpower and to meet the demands of the society in the coming years. This skill, recently I was just reading about the US Academy of Sciences. The three academies joined together there in the United States. They brought out a big report on this, the way in which the skilled workforce needs to be augmented in the United States of America, and perhaps what they did 10 years back, I think 15 years back, now we are doing now. But I was just woken up on that one. Okay, that's what I noticed from the report this morning I was reading. Okay, the skill on the occupation, in particular occupation, you need a skill. So what is the definition of a skill? What this United States three academic bodies, the highest academic bodies, define is occupations that require a high level of knowledge in a technical domain, but does not require a bachelor's degree. It means it's delinked from the degree, what the skill in the particular technical domain that we want to impart in young people at different level. It could be a school plus, 10 plus. After that, a post school, that is the diploma and the certification courses. Then later on, even in the engineering students. Now, because we talking about the skill, when we have seen the lots of survey by the government, by the bodies, by the regulatory bodies, by the private bodies, and various people kept bringing out, and even Government of India has hired many of the foreign agencies to prepare a report for Indian skill development. I don't know why you should do that one. So each of these reports, in fact, highlights how the skill is, even in engineering graduates, is lacking. Okay, only 30% of the Dilip will perhaps watch, and many other industrialists who have been on the panel will always talk about it. I'm sure when they talk in the open, they think they all agree that only 30% of the engineers are being hired by the employers because the employers feel they don't have the skills. Okay, so that is one aspect of that one, what the country is facing now. We are facing a tremendous shortage of skills in everything. In addition to that, the skills, which has gone through a very called paradigm shift changes as a technology changes over the period of in the last 100 years, 50 years, last 20 years, how the skills requirement is changing, how the different skills are required for a society, okay, for the people who have adapted to these new technologies, their requirement is different now. So one example I want to tell you how I've been making observations. 20-25 years back, you go to the States, to the shop, bring a television, and you fix up with a plug. But it doesn't happen now. You order online, the guy will come and deliver a TV. His job is to just fix the TV and set up the board and make it safely hanging on things, either front loading or whatever the kind of loading happens. Then after a few hours or a few days, another guy will come and he will integrate the Wi-Fi in the house to the television and to the remote. Okay, so it's a different level of skill that guy has got everything. So this kind of a different levels of skills people need to have, where the technology has evolved so much. 20 years, 30 years back, there was no internet, perhaps. That's why we did not know all those things. So in every sector now, the technologies are becoming converging and new technologies are coming. You have to integrate those technologies. You have products which requires more than one technology. We need to integrate, make it functional. Various devices, function, products, machines, various things. We have to have a component of a technologies from a different field, from the mechanical, from the production, from the sensors, electronics, and things like that. So we need to have people who can provide services in all these things. Basically, we need a people at that level, including the engineering graduates. We need a skilled workforce for the installation, for the maintenance, for the repair, and many other things in the construction, for the extraction, for manufacturing, for healthcare. We need a variety of things that skilled people are required. So how do you impart the skills in people at different age group so that they become really a super fine technologists, skilled people to cater to the needs of the society? This can come by a good education, good training program, well-equipped laboratories, well-equipped ecosystem where a talent, because in India, there's no lack of talent. Bright people, like Krishnan was telling about his student who got this startup and all these things. I have noticed this kind of a talent exists across the world. Although, of course, I slightly disagree with Dr. Dilip when he referred to the book on the world is flat by the what is this for his name, that 2005, world is flat. It is not, one way it is true. But if you look at the flat world, even in India, a narrow path is flat. In other areas, it is all hills and valleys. Okay, let us admit that one. Very narrow path where village people are connected to something, where he gets a car with the city people have got, but many other things. Hospitals are poor. They are not there. Okay, there's no Wi-Fi. There's no clean drinking water. Okay, there is no other things. It is not true. It's becoming a flat earth to certain people, but it is becoming uneven for more people. So we need these skilled people to make it even. Okay, they must make sure all these technologies that is available to the country, to the elite group, to the urban group, to the rich people, to the where people educated and all, must now, since one can access anywhere, and you should be able to use that one in those villages, in those people who cannot read English, who cannot write English, who don't understand the thing. So how do you bring this one? And how do you repair? For example, in an urban area, if you call a technician, he will come immediately. Where do you get these people for the villages? Where they also have owned a TV, modern TV, they've got gadget machines, everything they've got, because some of their family members will be earning some money, they would send it, they will buy everything. But how do you maintain that one? We need to have skilled people. So we need to ensure, first of all, a high-rated, highly qualified, highly skilled technicians available in a large number, in millions, to serve the society, in a large way, and this is very much required. So you can do that one with a proper education. That education at every level, at IT certification level, at the diploma level, at an engineering level. We need to have an ecosystem where a rigorous training of these skills, in a very rigorous way, has to be imparted to these people, enthusiastic, energetic, talented people, in a very systematic manner. And in a very good ecosystem, it means those providing a skilling, you must have all the equipments, all the tools, kind of tools, where they can use it, they can learn it, how to do that. Everything should be done. Then only, this is possible. In India has done this one. For example, several years ago, when I was the director of an IIT, I went to give a convocation address to the CSIO in the Chandigarh. So they have established a training school for precision instruments. Things 3 years or 2 years diploma course. And they, when they can do that kind of a skill training development in a Swiss school, okay, and produce excellent, outstanding technicians, skilled people who can get a jobs at very high salaries. Okay, why you are not able to do? And we have been struggling with this one, this development of skilled people. This skills development and skill activities has been fragmented in the country now. Various ministries are giving this kind of a skill training. They're making announcement. Various governments are giving, both the central and the state government. They're not talking to each other. There's a fragmented. There's no coordinated efforts. And this one, so many ministries, textile ministry, steel ministry, everybody is starting a skill centers. But there is no, we also need to have a people with a multiple skills. Let me tell you, we need a carpentry skills, little bit in a plumber, and a plumber, with an electrician. This is a one hard skill. But now they come into the futuristic things that is happening in the country, in the technology area, the digitalization process, everything is being digitalized now. Okay, so we need people trained in the digitalization even at that level. Okay, for example, I mentioned the guy who connects the TV to that one. Similarly, we need to understand, when a manufacturing healthcare system, the next to the this manufacturing, the largest number of skilled people required in the healthcare industry. I have seen myself as a Vice-Chancellor of the Anna University, when suddenly the COVID-19 came, then there were no ventilators were not working in the government hospitals. All ventilators have gone down, dead. Nobody had bothered about to repair the treatment, to put it back. The hue and cry made about ventilators, all kinds of the accidents, so much of thing happened. But we did not have sufficient, government hospitals lack these things. Okay, so you need to ensure everything works with these skilled people made available, and then only I think we can do this one. So this, what you call, Dr. Puneet talked to me about classical learning and modern learning. Let me tell you, the classical learning still is important. People have to come to the classroom. People have to put on hands-on experience. In addition to that, you should also train them in a virtual training, simulation, and a computer training. This is a modern thing that So the combination of these things can only make them a perfect and a highly skilled people. They are very going to be useful to the nation, and they can serve the society, the demands of the society, create wealth to the nation. The nation becomes prosperous. So this is very, very important. I think the country has to work in a very, very systematic way. I think the way in which I think we have done is, I don't think you will continue to talk like that. The skilled people, last 10 years you started, another 10 years you start like this. Continue to do that.
Thank you, Dr. Surappa, for emphasizing about the need of, the conventional learning blended with the modern tools of learning. And you raised a very valid point that so many people are talking about skill in various ministries and all, but the effectiveness is yet to be attained. So moving to Dr. Swati. So during this pandemic crisis, we have seen the shortage of trained manpower related to healthcare. So your take on the need of training and the facilities which are required in India to prevent such kind of crisis?
So yes, it's a very relevant question, I must say. So you have seen that during the pandemic, there was an absolute dearth of skilled manpower, and not only in the health sector, but even the paramedical sector, the logistics sector, even the pharma sector. So personally, I feel that, of course, a country can't plan for such pandemics, but we must plan for certain skill development which is focused around some of the upcoming sectors, health sector being one of them, logistics sector being another, and so on. So yes, we do need to certainly, as a nation, address this challenge. And the only way to address this challenge is to plan. And in order to plan, we must first identify what are the skill gaps. We must find out which are those sectors where there is a dearth of skilled manpower. and which are likely to come up in the, say, next few years, and then have a conscious effort to plan for training people, training youth, training students on picking up those skills. Another important factor associated with all of this is also educating people. So many times we see that students who are going in for education, they're not aware as to what kind of jobs and occupations are there available in the market, or what kind of jobs and professions are likely to come up in the next time period. This awareness is not there in the students as well as their parents. So one part is, of course, to plan for skilling, but the other more important part is also of counseling parents, counseling students, and engaging them, understanding, making them understand what are these jobs and occupations that are likely to come up in the next time period.
Thank you. Now coming to Dr. Rajdhani. We learn a lot in classroom training and teaching system, but there are many or several other skill sets which are required to become a good professional, which are socio-emotional skills, digital skills, technical skills, as well as cognitive skills. If you can throw some light with examples, the relevance of these skills to become a good professional.
Thank you for inviting me to this program and asking a very relevant question, talking about cognitive skills, emotive skills, as well as the technical and digital skills. Look, one important shift we need to understand that has happened in the entire business world is the disruption of the conventional business models. And when I say conventional business models, I mean to say that we had a time when we had linear business models between headcount and revenue. And this linearity was like, if a business moves from $100 million with a 500 manpower to a $200 million, the manpower may go from 500 to 1,000. So this linearity continued in the business. But in last few years, we have seen sudden shift in the business model and disruption. And the disruption is now no more a business which grows from $100 million to $200 million will have an assurance of headcount also moving at the same rate. In fact, businesses are having lesser manpower now to produce more. So the productivity is becoming the hallmark. And this has put a tremendous pressure on the organizations in terms of how they can stay productive with lesser and lesser resources. And this also has put a terrible pressure on the organizations to recruit and employees people who need to think differently, who are creative, who are innovative, who can automate to meet these cost and competitive challenges. And you see, at the same time, new startups are giving birth to new ways of working. And all this is creating a lot of disturbance in the business world, especially when it comes to skilling, reskilling, upskilling, cross-skilling, and also recruiting the employees. Now, when we look at this, we also when we look at the entire market scenario, we also see that new types of jobs are emerging. You see the kind of automation and the kind of innovation and the speed of disruption that has happened all around. The kind of new job roles that are also emerging. I had never heard of job roles like human technology integration specialist or telesurgeon, human machine team managers, trash architects, memory surgeons, robotic recruiters, 3D printing, 3D printed, what we call them, food technicians or chefs. You find so much of disruption in job roles, and this has put a tremendous pressure on the human resource development teams on crafting the new job descriptions and putting pressure back on the educational institutions. So the problem today with the educational institutions is that while they teach students, they also have to see what is the change happening outside. For example, I was hearing in the previous session there was a time when we used to hire mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, electronic engineers, computer engineers. If there was a fault in the machine, they may call the relevant engineer, mechanical or electrical fault or electronics. Today, the entire thought process has changed. You are now moving towards mechatronics, where you have the integrated engineering models having mechanical, electrical, electronics, and computer, everything in that. Now, this is putting a terrible pressure on the kind of skill sets that you are expecting among the students. So the kind of problem solving skills, the kind of complex creativity thinking skills, the kind of patience, the kind of empathy, the kind of learning and unlearning that is required is phenomenally changing. So from a domain to cognitive, there is a big shift. So companies today don't hire purely for domain skills. They hire for cognitive skills. They want to see whether the candidate has got the perseverance, whether a candidate is resilient. And when I say resilient, I mean to say the candidate is adaptive, the candidate is collaborative, the candidate is contemplative. So if these skills they don't find today among the youngsters, they feel they may be somewhere harming the interest of the organization. And that is why today these cognitive skills are becoming more important. And especially when there is mix of many jobs together and you have to do the higher order jobs, your ability to collaborate with other people, your social interactions have to be of the higher order. So which means what kind of emotional stability is in case of any disruption between two people. So social maturity, social balance is the most important element when it is looked into the candidate. And the last, what you said is digital skills. See, everything is getting automated. The role of humans, the role of individuals, the role of new employees is reducing to a higher order of jobs, and most of the jobs are getting automated. So digital skills and automation skills are becoming key to the success of the organization, combined with the cognitive skills. I think that's what I feel at this moment.
Thank you, Dr. Raj Nehru, for emphasizing the need of all these skill sets, which any youngster who is looking forward for any explorations, be it job or be it entrepreneurial activities, would require all these skill sets, no matter whatever the course he or she has studied. So now coming back to Mr. Dilip, India is full of ancient wisdom solutions which are socially or culturally driven. We have provided many solutions which are being explored in rural areas, no jugaad. So in what way we can preserve or standardize these solutions so that the coming generations can use them and the rest of the world can also get benefit out of all these?
Thank you, Puneet ji. I think, this is a topic we keep coming back over and over again. This morning, Dr. Anil Sahasrabudhe ji touched on it. He said this very succinctly, that the thousands of years of Indian wisdom, which has been documented, it forgot once we became colony. And today, with the information flowing at the speed at which it is flowing, and the younger generation, I doubt they even understand the scale in which that wisdom has been documented. If you look at science, any science, whether it's came from West or East or anywhere, it is understanding nature at its deepest ground level. We are, at the end of the day, live in an environment, and we're trying to understand that environment and mimic that environment. And, the industrial revolutions so far did the exact opposite. And see what we have done. We have taken out the carbon that should have been buried under the ground. And now we understand the science has evolved to a level where we understand it better. But if you go back to our Indian scriptures, and not religious way, but as a way of life, we lived in one with the nature for majority of our history. And that need to be understood very well. I referred this earlier that I grew up in a small village for my first 15 years. We had a small garden in the back. The vegetables are grown, they're all organic. even when we went to the market, we carried a bag with us. It was not a plastic bag. It's a bag from, it's a sack or some other material that was there that we carried. And, I've been living in New York for 20 years. Today we go to this place called Whole Foods to buy organic food, and you spend an entire paycheck to get the same lifestyle that I had in the village growing up. So, so there are a lot of, that's just one example. I can, now we have this whole ministry called Ayush, describing the ancient methods, which are well understood. And in fact, even Western medicine started with understanding, how the nature cures itself. There is a common saying in different parts of Africa: you can eat a leaf that is eaten by an elephant, right? Because elephant will not touch poison. So, these are things you learn by observing the nature. And then, the 5, 7, 10,000 years of culture, observing the nature and documented was forgotten. Thanks to the government and all the efforts made by the different organizations today trying to instill pride and in bringing back the culture. And the most important thing is, some of these things need to be exposed to the scientific rigor. When we talk about any cures, the way we do clinical trials, it became very public, and I think people understand now after the COVID vaccines, clinical trials, how the clinical trials are done by the third party to go through the scientific rigor. So some of these ancient methods should be exposed to the standardized scientific rigor so that they could be easily accepted across the globe. India has a very good IP office, intellectual property office. And today, as we are breeding more and more entrepreneurs, and as we are encouraging people to come out with an ideas and create products or platforms, they all need to be exposed to these standard methods, because these are of international standards. The IP, copyrights, all of these are from international standards. So once you create, you can file a patent in India, and across the globe. But I don't think today it's widely prevalent, or it's widely understood on how some of these things work. So I'm jumping between two different topics because I want to bring them together. Because I think a little while ago there was a case in somebody filed a patent for basmati rice. Here we take it for granted, right? Nobody ever thought of it. So, but that's not how the things work in the rest of the world. So I think it is very important for us, on one side, to educate our young on the culture that has been very well documented, the way of life that has been very well documented, to live in oneness with the nature, oneness with your neighbors, oneness with the flora and fauna around us. On the other side, any ideas that we have, it is the responsibility of the government, of the institutions, of the academic institutions, the private institutions, all of us, to educate our folks on some of these standards that exist across the globe and bringing them to their fingertips so that they could understand the meaning. And they could by themselves think of in a way that they can file their own patents, they can file their own copyrights that will be respected across the globe. So it is, I don't think it is in the hands of any one group. It is a collective responsibility. And all of these are now global. And, Dr. Surappa talked about the difficulties in rural India. Dr. Surappa, I don't know if you'll be surprised, or you probably already know this. The problems faced by rural India are the same problems faced by rural America. They're no different. If the TV is gone in rural America, they have a problem trying to find someone, good luck with them getting past the robot collar, right? To find a technician or even have somebody come in and do it. These problems are global today. They're not, whether the world is flat, whether the world is broken, it's broken across the globe. It's not just broken in India. So the solutions that we come up with will work across the globe to a large extent. Maybe there are a few countries it won't work, but there are a lot of countries which are waiting in tag to take the solutions that are developed in India. And I'm really glad this government has opened up CoWIN for the rest of the world, because there are several countries which look at the solutions that are being developed for the country in India and asking for those solutions so that they can use them as well. As government is encouraging the open source. That's another area where today we talk about open source, but not many people understand that to create an open source, some of those choices and licenses need to be understood well ahead of time, not after you've developed the product. So these are the type of things which, through skilling and through technology, that we can bring to the fingertips of every Indian who's interested in learning them. You're on mute, Professor Puneet.
Thank you, Dilip ji. So we need to align ourselves with nature and to maintain the ecosystem. Our forefathers have developed a lot. We need to look back and use those ancient wisdom and blend it with the modern technology and move ahead. I think that is the way to proceed further. So now coming to Dr. Krishnan. Rightly said by Dr. Dilip ji that living with the nature is a way. Similarly, entrepreneurial thinking is a way to live. Be it as a child when 100 rupees pocket money is given to you, how you utilize that money wisely in an optimum manner. So that's how the entrepreneurial thinking starts. Your take on entrepreneurial thinking, the way of life. Sir, you are on mute.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Puneet ji. Absolutely well said. Today, there is a significant scope, particularly in the STEM colleges, to relook at the way we impart our skill training. So, we have been traditionally very good at imparting knowledge. Now, knowledge needs to be augmented with skill to actually leverage the knowledge that you gain to deliver a solution or to deliver, effectively what you have learned. So entrepreneurship, and more importantly, what I would call the entrepreneurial thinking and skill sets are very critical in today's world. Now, one way to do that is, there are two ways to actually impart education. One is to impart knowledge, which is primarily a one-way from the teacher to the student. But more and more, you see that learning by doing is becoming a fairly common way of learning. And it has a better, way of imparting skill sets in addition to knowledge. Now, many non-STEM programs, which I have encountered, starting from healthcare to industrial design programs, many of them actually have gone that route. In fact, if you go to, say, a college like in National Institute of Design, they don't actually have too many lectures. Okay, unlike an engineering college where you are in 6 hours to 8 hours a day, you're in lecture and maybe you have a couple of labs a week. It's unlike that. If you go to some of these programs, even if you go to medicine, once you get past a couple of years of the usual learning, they actually learn on the job. Now, this is something that needs to probably be looked at from a STEM perspective. You have to look at how do they impart the skill sets of leadership, the skill set of creating a vision, skill set of even looking at a business point of view, because today, as was already mentioned by Dr. Nehru, we live in a world where you cannot be an ultra specialist and say that I only am siloed and I don't know what's going on elsewhere. So we need to start creating opportunities for the students, and that can start from schooling onwards. A lot of, you can have a lot of make-believe opportunities for students to play role playing. Now this happens in some few schools, but a lot of the other schools are more conventional. Same thing with STEM colleges. We are more towards, curriculum. I'm more worried about, can I finish the course in the right time? And can I give a pretty hard exam to these kids and make them sweat? And I love to see them sweat. We need to go away from that to a point where we must understand that our classroom is meant for learning. And evaluation is a part of it, but it is not the end all of the whole thing. The end all is for them to understand and to deliver something based on their understanding. And skill set becomes a very major part of it. Now, entrepreneurship, for example, is something that you cannot teach effectively. What you can do is to create opportunities for them to learn. So again, in engineering, while you may be tempted to start introducing courses again on entrepreneurship, I would rather go the other way by saying that can we create opportunities? In fact, I used to do that 20 years ago. Typically, unlike in any engineering, you have this final year project, all right, and most of us don't think about it till probably halfway through that semester, and suddenly we know that there is an a viva or something coming up. What I used to do was to recruit students, BTech students, at the end of the first year, and I usually recruit about 8 to 10 of them, give them an internship in the first summer. And most of them will continue for a year or so. And some of them used to continue on that same thought process for about 4 years. And what we could do was that some of them actually turned out to be great projects at the end of their 4th year, where they're working for 4 years. And more importantly, many of them turned out to be something which they could leverage on, either to get a better job or to actually go towards, even an entrepreneurship. So entrepreneurial thinking is not just about starting a company. In fact, I always say that I would rather lead 20 entrepreneurs in a company rather than non-entrepreneurs, because every entrepreneur and entrepreneurial thinking is a creative person, a person who can contribute more effectively than otherwise. So I believe that entrepreneurial thinking has to prevail and also be pervasive. But for that, there's one important thing that we probably have to rethink. That is got to do with the fact that many of our faculty themselves have to reorient the way they want to educate the younger kids. So there could be a lot of retraining that we need to do at a faculty level, but then that will create the opportunity for the younger students to really become more entrepreneurial in their thinking, more creative in their thinking. And we need to give them the freedom to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Krishnan. At the end of the session, we'd like to quote one example which is being exercised in Rajasthan, which is connecting to nature and entrepreneurial activity. So right now I am moving to Dr. Surappa. Learners' confidence leads to increased competence. There is a common saying, confidence leads to competence. So your take on that? Short reply on that.
You muted, sir.
You are on mute, sir. Dr. Surappa, you are on mute. You need to unmute, sir. Dr. Surappa, we are unable to hear you. You need to unmute.
Yeah.
Now you are.
So you seem to be very fascinated with the learning. You started with the classical learning to the blended learning. Okay. And I don't know, you're more and more you're I've been a learner all my life, so that let me talk to you a little bit about how I have been learning from morning to evening and all these things. Okay, so now basically now I'm not again going to touch upon the the learning at a different level. Now you're since whole this meeting on the mission education is more focused on the skill. Okay, and the skill development. I'm not going to touch upon the higher end of the learning, the research, innovation, excellent, outstanding research, quality papers. I'm not going to talk about it because I can give a talk on that one on a different platform very easily and all that one. But so now, first of all, I think I would love nice to hear from Dilip that his what you call his way of living when it is a childhood in a village, and he has to get that one with the thousands of dollars in New York City. Okay, going and all these things, spending the same ambience or same kind of a living, with an organic food and unadulterated vegetables, things like that. He has to spend, I think, that tens and thousands of dollars in New York City to do that one. Anyhow, that is how the life is. How the cycle of technology and things are changing. Okay. So now your question about experience and the confidence and the that you raised about it. Okay. Confidence and the competence. That is true. That you need both confidence and the competence. I think both are required, and you must go beyond that. In fact, both confidence, competence, and a little more humility. Okay, and to serve the people. So these are all the things that is required in any professional job, professional assignment. Whether that is all required. Now coming to the topics of this what you call the skills and competence that is required at various levels and various components of the this skills and the competences. You basically, and what I learned, if I look at the kind of a skills required for a skilled workforce, people who attend to the various things, okay, different kinds of jobs, the different domain skills, what is required for them in order to be a very well sought skiller, where everybody was looking for him, just like a doctor, particular doctor looks for him, patients looks for a particular doctor, what is way in which he treats the patients, way in which he looks at the patient, talks to the patient and examines and gives the correct confidence. So this is the same thing applies everywhere in every profession in my life, in my thinking. So here, first of all, you need to have a very good personal skills. Okay, this includes basically the integrity, the dependability. It means the guy should come at a time that he has to come, so gives an appointment time. Reliability. Okay, then he also should show, he's continuously in touch with the learning process, learning the skills, new skills, lifelong learning skills. He must also be there now. So this is what you call the personal qualities, personal skills. Then he must also have the academic competence. His skills, basically he must be, his academically must be reasonably strong, such as reading, writing, mathematics, calculations, and some knowledge of science, and some of the critical and analytical thinking and the creative thinking, which you also talked about all these things. So this skilled people, workforce must have these kind of things, which will give them a higher level of confidence when he visits various kinds of people for the job. Then, workplace competence is called. This includes, when he goes there, looking at the problem, technological problem that is posed to him, whether it's a repair job or a maintenance job or setting it right or anything, he must be familiar with the kinds of tools and technologies. Okay, that when a skilled worker, a skilled person comes, he must be very well familiar with all the tools that are available to handle that job and the technologies that are associated with this one. Especially, if you see the old kitchens in our houses and all these things, old plumbers, that lines are different now. Now it is totally different kinds of kitchens now. You have modular kitchens, you have the pipelines has to be changed from the gas to the modular Gale gas, and all the switches have been changing now. Their hood is gas hood is changing. So the guy who has taken the old one, he has to be put into a new one. He must be familiar with both the old one and the new one. Okay, so this is what called his familiarity with the technologies and possibly the future one also. So that gives him a greater confidence to handle the job. Then he also must have the domain specific capabilities, competence. It depends upon the particular area. And for example, if a skilled worker is called for an emergency requirement, even in the skilled people, in all areas, including the healthcare, wellness, medical emergencies. Suddenly sometimes it happens, suddenly he gets a heart attack or something else, a medical emergency. So skilled people should be able to provide that emergency aid to that kind of a patient immediately before he is taken to the hospital. So this is the kind of a thing. And for example, the other one for example that I can quote is on the highway road and all, or even in the city, if the automobile stops, these days, these present day automobiles cannot be opened very easily by everybody. But it must be a man where he can move the vehicle out of from that place, at least to the nearest station. That emergency requirement of a repairing that vehicle. So these are all the things that these skilled people must possess. And in addition to learning in the class, learning in the experience, you must also work in a team, okay? And look at the issues, look at the kind of skills that has to be played, to be exhibited by him in order to get the things going and all these things. So all this accumulation of this kind of a knowledge, experience, hands-on experience, working in team, okay, and interpersonal skills and ability to talk to the people, convince the people about it, all these things makes him more efficient, more competent, and more liked by the people. And that's how he'll be successful in all these things.
Thank you, Dr. Surappa. There is a lot when it comes to grassroots level jobs. But at the same time, I'm coming to Swati ji, to you. Are you there, Dr. Swati?
Yes, I'm there.
Yeah. Despite of the fact that there is a lot of need to create manpower for front-end line jobs, grassroots level jobs, but still it has been observed that skill education, there are several challenges in terms of the eyes of adopting a course which is a conventional course than BVOC or something which is vocational or skill-oriented related courses. Your take on challenges in imparting skill education?
See, basically, there has always been two issues with skill-based education, and the first issue is the social acceptance. So that I think is a universal kind of problem in this area. And the second problem is that of aspirations amongst the students. So to address the first problem, of course, the challenges around that are many. For example, students, there is a lack of awareness amongst the students and parents. The second is that a lot of the skill-based courses are very terminal in nature. They don't lead up to degrees. Thirdly, the government has introduced this BVOC degree, which there is a very poor industry acceptance of BVOC. Many parents and students who want to go abroad, want to send their kids abroad for education, again, are doubtful about BVOC. Even the industries, as you know, are more accepting of conventional degrees like BTech, BBA, MBA, and all that. So on one hand is the social acceptance problem, and the second is the aspirations. So looking at these numerous challenges, I primarily think that, again, I go back to counseling. It's very important to counsel and educate students and parents and to make them understand the potential for skill-based education. Again, make them understand the alignment of skill-based courses with the jobs and occupations, various professions in the market at any given particular point in time. The potential for self-employment, entrepreneurship, startups, which is also very high with skill-based education. So largely at a higher level, there are these challenges of social acceptance, then of course aspirations, and the lack of also vertical mobility from a short-term course all the way to a degree or a PhD level. So these are all linked. There are some other very specific kind of issues, of equivalency, and so students who are doing skill-based courses on a short term, sometimes they are not declared equivalent to, say, a 12th standard pass student. So what happens is then these students are not able to appear for entrance tests of engineering, management, and so on. So that equivalency is also one of the challenges. In some states, this equivalency has been granted, but across pan-India, still
It's missing.
still there are issues. So hopefully, once the new education policy gets implemented, then things will fall in line. Last but not the least, even recognition of prior learning in its true sense is still a challenge, because when recognition of prior learning was being discussed in the country about, say, 12 years back, at that time our think tank, what we had in mind is that if a student say comes with certain skills, say an ITI pass out, or any other student who may have done a 1 year or 2 year course, and he or she comes with certain skills, then through the recognition of prior learning, we should be able to measure those skills. We should be able to map them in a particular, level. Certificate should be given to the student, and then he should be guided on a learning pathway that, okay, now you can get credit exemptions for certain courses, and then he or she can be guided on how to complete the rest of the educational program, could be degree or diploma. So that picture still remains a big challenge in terms of its actual execution or implementation.
Thank you, Dr. Swati. I think counseling and the success story will break this ice, and more takers would be there for vocational courses. Now, last one quick question with Dr. Nehru. Scaling for small enterprises and informal economy. Just we have 1 minute to go.
Okay, so this is the most deprived area that in the country we find today. If you look at the overall market size, you will find your mid-sized enterprises are just 1% of the total pie. You have almost 63 million against 24,000 mid-sized enterprises in the country. And you have almost 28 lakh, almost 2.8 million small enterprises, followed by almost 1.5 or 2 lakh these small enterprises. But if you look at between this mid-size and the small and informal economy, you will find 80% of our entire labor force rests in these small enterprises and informal economy, and contributing to almost 50% to the total GDP. But what's happening in country today? The entire focus is on that 20% of the employment generation, which is the large industries, mid-sized industries. The policies, schemes, rules, regulations are made for them, but this 80% of the informal market gets completely ignored. Despite this having the highest potential, today you have almost 400 million people employed in the informal sector, out of which almost 50% is in the agriculture sector, and the rest of them are in the non-agriculture sector. But there is no specific focus on them. But if you look at the industries, you have construction, you have retail, you have tourism, hospitality, apparel, handicrafts, weaving, furniture, furnishing, warehousing, logistics, domestic help. They are all such industries where there is a phenomenal amount of focus. But the problem is there is no structured skill development opportunities in that area. I am suggesting just two things. One is, if you look at the traditional Indian system, if you look at the traditional focus of skilling, that was Guru Shishya Parampara. You have today apprenticeship India, which is targeting only the large industries, big, mid-sized segments. But in the informal sector, there is no apprenticeship model today existing. Through this medium, I would like to propose that government should rethink on how to bring apprenticeship in the non-formal sector. How can gurus and shishya concept can be reworked and brought to the contemporary world, where through recognition of prior learning, you identify various experienced people, uncertified, who can be certified, and then later, out of those groups from RPL, you identify gurus and then give them an opportunity of engaging, these people, some people as shishyas. and create that Guru Shishya model where we can have these non-formal sector, informal sector people getting skilled and trained under the tutelage of experienced gurus. But this scheme needs to be formalized. You know, it can completely transform the kind of livelihood opportunity challenges we are facing. And the second one is recognition of prior learning in higher education. Today, you have more than 50 million youngsters unqualified working in the industries, but unfortunately they don't have opportunities to study further. Because of financial reasons, they have entered into the labor market working into the MSMEs and small or large organizations. But almost 50 million youngsters such are eligible but not in the higher education. Recognition of prior learning can recognize their existing level of experience and allow them to only complete those areas which they have not completed in their experience of 5, 6, 10 years, and then in the short possible time they can go and complete their higher education. I think these two can bring a tectonical shift in the country if informal sector has to be really relooked and made a strong game-changing activity in these areas.
Thank you, Dr. Nehru, for raising a valid point. And before I conclude this session, a heartily welcome to Professor M.P. Puneet. I pass on this question to him that he would like to attempt in his closing speech. And I extend my to Dilip ji. Thank you for being with us, during the trial sessions as well as guiding us at each and every point. Swati ji, thank you very much. Raj Nehru ji,
Thank you.
Professor Krishnan, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity.
Your session, which is delivering through ease. Delivering through ease is my take. The favorite activity. Dr. M.K. Surappa, thank you very much for delivering more than what was, and it was quite useful. And this is how we conclude our today's all 4 sessions. And I request Ketki ji to take over. Thank you.